right now parked out front of Cozy Cannabis Dispensary in Austin, and cool. we're gonna go in at 2:30. At 2:30 starts the Terpene. What's it called? Terpene Ball, and we're gonna be judging concentrates.
We're gonna be smoking concentrate for 4 hours straight.
Yeah, that's really fucking cool.
So much concentrate that I won't be able to concentrate.
Yeah, Ben's like, we have the podcast before because it won't happen.
I'm going to be fucking flying, bro.
So my girlfriend goes to medical school in Knoxville, and I live here in Kentucky, my hometown, and so we're
Knoxville?
Yeah, Knoxville, Tennessee.
I lived in Knoxville way back in the day.
Oh, that's awesome. She would love that. Before I moved
to Hawaii. My dad was a professor at UT.
Cool. Yeah, she goes to Lincoln Memorial there. It's like a medical school, but Knoxville's great, but yeah, so we're getting a hotel tonight in Nashville, and Nashville's got a bunch of new dab bars. You can go and you can go take THCA, like live resin dabs at the bar in Nashville.
What did I say? Yeah. I knew it was coming.
Because they don't even have a program, right?
I've been doing this for like a year or so now. Like, yeah, THCA is a very wide open market in Tennessee. Like, there's like dispensaries now in Tennessee. It's just THCA flower. It's just concentrates. It's all.
No, I don't mean that. I'm just gonna open the doors of. I'm gonna open the doors of. Is there cops anywhere? Do they care here?
So Tennessee has no medical program, right?
No, I don't believe so. But yeah, THCA is just a wide open market for Tennessee. Some states are more restrictive with it, but Tennessee is like really wide open right now. So it's really cool to see. Like in Knoxville, there's a bunch of like dab bars and dispensaries and stuff you can go to too.
Dude.
Yeah.
So the people just decided that weed's legal. No, so they're just getting ready for.
It was just kind of like this mass kind of like uprising with the THCA thing where so much money got put into like dispensaries, dab bars, just there's a huge flower market there. So it's just kind of become so like part of the ecosystem and economy that they've kind of let it go for a while. I think there has been attempts at like legislature to limit it and regulate it, and they might do that at some point. But as of right now and for the past year or two, it's been a very, very dense market in Tennessee, and it's been like a lot of fun to interact with because I can get to Tennessee in like 20-30 minutes from my house. So
oh shit,
you should probably just be a little cautious with the smoke. Okay. I'm only suggesting that this place may be a.
If you guys get arrested, we're getting it on film on the podcast.
It's gonna be on there. It's gonna be on the podcast regardless.
Can you hear the difference? Is there any difference with the car on as far as engine fan or static or anything so that you could tell? I turned it back on.
No, I think it's okay. Was there anything in particular y'all wanted to discuss today during the podcast?
Yeah. We just want to talk shit for the most part, and I'd love actually to hear about your trip to the woods. You know, I'd love to hear. What was it, Yeti Land?
Yeah, Yeti Land. Well,
I'd love to hear about that, bro.
It's called Enigma, the festival. It's called the Enigma Gathering, and it's in this place called Yeti Land. So our business partner, Eric, he does like breath work and like all this shit there in Malibu. He's a great guy, but he's very well like connected within that like California scene and stuff. And so he knows this guy, Yeti. Him and Yeti go way back, and Yeti made a lot of money, let's say, like billions of dollars from black market marijuana, like cannabis, back in the day when like the sort of like California mountains was a really hot region and supplied like a lot of the United States with the supply. He made a lot of money, and so he has all this land out there, and it's called Yeti Land. And it was one of these like really small festivals. There was probably like maybe 2,000 people there max, and it was a very drug heavy, like a lot of drug consumption for sure. Like there isn't all those things, but sometimes you can go to a festival that's more like conscious based, and there's a lot of it's really like breath work and workshop based, and but this was definitely like a lot of heavy drug use, which I like. I always find that sort of like facet of American subculture really interesting, right? Especially like this one, because it was like this like what we came to realize over the course of being there, and I'm probably going to have to end up editing some of this out, honestly, of the final episode that we put out, but I came to realize while we were in the course of being there that what Yeti Land was, because I described Yeti to you, but like the people who worked there and the walkie-talkies and the people we were buying ketamine from and like the people that Eric knew and I was being introduced to and things, it was essentially like a Northern California like drug cartel. Like, you know what I mean?
Okay.
And, yeah, and they're really nice people, really cool guys. But yeah, they're like connected to like the Grateful Dead and the tour managers.
Oh,
like
sweet.
some of them are the children of people who were tour managers for Grateful Dead. So there's this it was really interesting. I actually ended up doing MDA for the first time.
Oh, I like MDA.
Oh my God, it was.
Tell me about it.
I liked it better than MDMA. Like, if I'm just
I
being
get that sometimes as well.
Dude,
Yeah.
we have some right-handed MDA.
Yep. Which is that stereoisomer, right? That's what a Thai, not MDA, but the right-handed versions of these, I guess, is more psychedelic, less amphetamine.
Yeah,
So,
and it was very, like you just said, very psychedelic. It was very visual, but at the same time, very stimulating and empathogenic. It was very long lasting, right? And then we also ended up doing. The three of us, it was me, Christian, and Eric, were the three owners of Minnesota Nice. We were in our tent at night, and we were all rolling off the MDA, and we did ketamine. And dude, it felt like we were in this combined like journey spaceship thing going through this because ketamine's that kind of like funny it's this double-edged sword of it feels really important, and I think that like to some degree it is. But it's also like it can be a trap. You know what I'm saying? That feeling of like importance within like a really deep ketamine experience and like experiencing that with them, like in the combination of MDA, all three of us together, I was getting this very tryptamine like feel from the ketamine, which I usually don't get. Usually dissociatives by themselves have this colder edge, which could be fun in its own way, can be interesting and insightful in its own way. But like with the MDA, it truly felt like I was in this like tryptamine palace. Like, and the more ketamine I took, the more visual it became. And yeah, it was a really fun experience. I met this girl. She was really sweet. She was the first bald-headed chick that I'd ever been attracted to in my life. She just had this energy about her. I told her right off the bat, I was like, I have a girlfriend. Like, you know, I was like, you're lovely. You know, we flirted and we conversed for a long period of time. But like, she was really attractive for a bald woman. Like she like shaved her head like purposefully. And not that I have anything against bald women at all. I just generally, I don't find myself super attracted to them. But she was like really attractive. So that was like kind of new for me. But also I have to like ask myself how much of that was truly my attraction to her, and also like the situation, the fact that I was on MDA. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Drug-induced sexual motivations. That's a new one. No, totally. Yeah, I feel you, bro.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to cover, Gabe, was I went up and visited Scott Sellers up at the Church of the Total Light, right? The folks Ken Nelson, the Army Ranger, right, who first smoked toads. So yeah, I went up there and visited them, and visited Scott and hung out with them, and they want to help us, like start a sanctuary in Arizona to start protecting the toads and understanding how to restore them and that kind of stuff. So
yeah, because there's some, and we can just go right into whatever. Like this is stuff we can share. But so many people are like keyboard warriors and like leave the toads alone, 5-MeO DMT, all this stuff. And I get that like if you can make it in a lab, but if you want to make it in a lab, it's 5x in reagents of toxic waste to make one of. So if you're making a kilo of 5-MeO DMT, you have to use 5 kilos of toxic waste products, or you create 5 kilograms of toxic waste products. What are you doing with those? So there is no like golden goose egg that's out there just fucking laying golden geese. And so we know in like human behavior, animal conservation is something that we don't always make the right choices, but we know what the science behind our conservation efforts are and how to do it the best. So, in reality, when you stress a population and they don't die, they typically grow back stronger and more robust. And so, I would argue that like milking the toads and having people be taught how to do it properly in doing that process will actually increase conservation, and it will increase the population and the resiliency of the population. Because now you have people that actually care about the animals. They're not avoiding them. They're going out there and they're seeing and they're interacting. And that's key, and that's the education part, right? And so, I think that the pure, I won't leave the pure toad as far as like for works. I want, if I'm working with someone and they want to crack all the way open, like I want to put nature in there. I'm not gonna.
This is an interesting thing that you're bringing up. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
go please. We're freestyling, dude.
Yeah, dude. What you're just describing, though, because I've heard this this argument right on both sides of people claim that with the full spectrum toad 5-MeO that is a different experience than like say just straight synthetic 5-MeO, right? Yeah. And then I've heard people argue that there's no way because the sort of other alkaloids present within it aren't within high enough concentrations to produce an effect and things. And I think it's one of those things where I think everyone has to humble themselves to a degree of I think there's a lot of unknown here that we're all kind of like simultaneously figuring out together, right? And I do think that I think that definitely people on the materialistic side of things need to humble themselves to that fact. And I think that people on the sort of Bufo heavy side of things need to humble themselves to the fact of placebo and stuff. But there's also, it's like, it's kind of comes back to this like unknown aspect, and we're discovering. So like, I guess I say all that just to kind of set the scene for the audience. And there's this really massive debate that's been ongoing for this for a long time. But what do you guys think of that sort of argument? What is your stance on it?
Sure. Well, ultimately it's the same molecule, and it affects people the same, whether it's pure synthetic or whether it's 5-MeO and the Sonoran Desert toads exudate. And I think it's more that any of this absolutism with these medicines just doesn't work. Like Ben just said, it's unrealistic to. You can say, hey, the synthetics might be, more efficient and more beneficial to the toads, but that's kind of in the abstract. Like, how do you go get that? I mean, 5-MeO DMT is illegal, and but going and milking the toads, isn't illegal, I guess, until you decide to milk them to smoke it. But is there an entourage effect in smoking the toad? Well, I don't know. I don't think the other molecules in there are making a difference in the effect, and yet there are peptides in that exudate, and there is a special kind of lift that comes from smoking the toad that with this smoking the pure synthetic, you do get a little bit of that pure THC kind of effect, right? Where in other words, it's all one molecule. And ultimately we want to teach people how to protect and conserve and restore the toads, and then people can decide whatever they want to do. I think anyone telling people what they should do like that it's a lot of overreach.
Well, there's not much to talk about, right, in psychedelics. So it seems it seems like the more we talk about like behavior modifications, and you can listen to people talk. Like when they're talking about behavior modifications, there's nothing interesting, right? So they're just using that as control mechanisms to isolate things and pathways for their own interests. People are all out for themselves, and not that it's wrong or right. It's just what I noticed. And so, really fair enough. Take. If what you're out for is a nonprofit and trying to get people help and like get the medicine, sure, like I get it. But I look at people's motivations and like why they're speaking about things like MDMA, AT. Like, of course, therapists are going to be jockeying for assisted therapy. Everyone is who's in licensing, of course, because they're fighting for their own survival, their own way to work in the game, versus community, versus church, versus neighborhood, tribe, however you want to organize it, versus that model where people and communities are doing it, and there's education and there's resources for people that they can plug into, but they're not required to go through, because I don't want to get my stuff through someone's identity, someone's ego that may or may not have done the work themselves and understands these compounds. And so, I think this is like looking at the greater landscape. the isolated 5-MeO molecule is great, and it does things. If you're just going in for full release, like I'm going to go in and get some 5-MeO like for release, of course it's going to do that. Of course it's going to do that. But I think there's so much more to the work. You know, when you look at it agnostically, there's so much more that goes into the process when you're working with some natural medicines, with a different approach, with a more like nature-centric approach and more holistic approach, where it just completes the story energetically, not just pharmaceutically, but like energetically. And that's part of the disconnection that we've all had as humans. We've taken the experience away from the solution. So we get all these pills that fix all these things. And so when someone's going to monetize the God molecule, they're going to say, this molecule fixes this problem. You know, when it's all said and done, they go through all these trials. But it's not. I don't see it that way. But that's my own personal perspective. But I think that it all is kind of touching the same. It's all touching each other. All these afflictions, all these neuroses, they're all like stemming from very similar origins. And if not, they're like manifesting the same way in people's bodies. So changing the conversation to like mental fitness and using these compounds to optimize one's life. And it's a continuum of process where you work with these medicines over the curve of your life. And that's what really gives you a good way to output and process information. There's not like, okay, I took this pill, PTSD's over. You know, it's a process, it's work. And so when I'm working with stuff, that's why I like mushrooms, because they're natural and I can work with them. And it's going to be varying experience, but I can trust it 100%. I'm like, it's going to give me what I need, and it's safe. So,
right. Yeah, man. What you were, there's a lot that I want to address. What you were describing about the difference between sort of Bufo and straight synthetic 5-MeO, it's obviously different, but it reminded me a little bit of something like, that I've experienced. There's a huge difference in, like, say, growing your own psilocybin and, like, taking 4-ACO-DMT, right? Could even be from a great, reputable manufacturer. And the thing that I say, the reason why I feel like it's similar is because with that relationship, those two different relationships that I've experienced, they're very similar experiences, right? But they're also different in their own regard, in their own very special way. And I don't think one is necessarily better than the other. In fact, I think both have unique use cases in my life and on my path and probably on other people's. Yeah, and that thing you were saying too about the sort of like these things following us growing with these things in the curve of life. This is something I've thought a lot about because, there's that old quote by Alan Watts where he says, once you get the message, you hang up the phone. And I've heard a lot of people beckon that, and I agree and disagree with that statement because, like, I think to a certain degree there is a time and a place to stop taking the things and take some time off and to integrate, like we all talk about, right? But I also think in a way that there's always more to be learned. That's like the feeling that I get. Exactly. Feels like I'm always evolving, and so these things are always kind of evolving with me. And I also have met people that beckon this message so hard of like, sober up, integrate, hang up the phone. And I've met quite a few of these individuals now, and it's a funny sort of pattern that I notice, and I truly feel like it comes from a place of sort of I think it's a projection in a way. I think a lot of these individuals have reached a place where the sort of they've reached a level with it where there is truly like a sort of spiritual discipline that's necessary, and there's a lot of true internal work that happens within the experience that is hard for people to sometimes come back to a lot and to push themselves out of their comfort zone. It's almost kind of like an ice bath. I remember Dennis McKenna was talking about Terrence McKenna one time on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he was talking about Terrence towards the end of his life. And he said that it was really interesting because, Terrence was this very outspoken sort of psychedelic advocate, thought leader guy, right? And towards the end of his life, he really wasn't taking a lot of psychedelics at all. Dennis said regarding that, he was saying that he felt like it was because Terrence had reached this point where the psychedelic experiences stopped being so external, focused on the external, the aliens and the, it truly became internal. and he had to look at himself, and he had a hard time coming back to that, and he felt like it was kind of a conundrum that his brother experienced towards the end of his life of being this psychedelic advocate, prophet guy, but he had a hard time taking psychedelics himself. And I've seen this in other people too. And so I really appreciate that thing you said about you fall in with the curve of your life. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to take psychedelics for the entirety of their life or anything like that, but I don't know, man. At the same time, I've had this feeling for myself of like, you know, there is time to take time off, but also if it's been a very long time, it's like, why am I not able to show up for this thing that I know is going to push me out of my comfort zone, but it's ultimately always been beneficial for me, you know?
I mean, that's the older I've gotten, and the more I have woven into culture outside of the military, the more when I work with psychedelics, it sort of illuminates everything. And so it's really, I'm seeing myself learn the process of witnessing what my resistance is. And for me, it manifests as scenarios or, you know, things that I miss, you know, like as far as like caring for my family or making sure that things are properly put away or safe or, you know, whatever. I notice it will show me the things that I've left unfinished or uncleaned. And it's like, okay, it's going to show me in a very direct way that is related to how I see the world. And I can see that when I started this journey with, I wouldn't say like ignorance, but with total unknowing of anything and limited experiences outside of military experiences and, you know, living in a military population, really. So I had that safety net where if I felt like uncomfortable, I could go and see everyone in fucking uniforms, and I'm like, okay, I'm safe, I'm good, everything's good. But now switching that into like civilian life, I do deep dives less frequently, because when I do, I'm going through a lot of the stuff, the resistance stuff, where I'm seeing the truth for what it is, and it's not my own shit anymore. I've moved through that, but now it's like this is what society's built on. This is the foundation, and it's not fucking great, you know. And so, in the ignorant mind, it's all sunshine and rainbows and TV and movies and superheroes. But the truth is, it's built on a foundation of suffering. And you start to see that stuff, and the psychedelics don't let you look away from it. Yeah. It's like you take them, and you're like, you can't look away. You can't do the dancing part until you accept. And so it's helped me a lot with accepting what really is. And you know, and we actually had the conversation this morning with one of the vets on our hike, and it was interesting because we're talking about like good guys and bad guys, and like realizing that good guys don't have to wear a uniform and walk around with guns all day. And so I'm just reminded, because they look like good guys. They're like, I'm a good guy. I'm here to protect you. I'm here to keep you safe. But why do you have to present in a militarized fashion? Because, you know, you can say one thing, but you can be completely flip-flopped. And I think that's what we've gotten to as a society. And psychedelics will show people this, especially people that want to see.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to lay this on you guys, and I've laid this on a few people now, but what you were just saying brought this up for me. I heard this on a podcast a few weeks ago. I forget who it was, but this guy said that essentially love equals responsibility, right? He was describing it. It was like, you know, if you love your children, you're responsible for showing up as a good father and for nurturing them. There's a responsibility that comes with that. If you love your house plant, you're going to like water it and give it sunlight. There's a response. Like if you really break it down, it seems like love truly does kind of equal responsibility. And what you're describing about this sort of like this really deep thing that comes up in a lot of these psychedelic mystical experiences is there's simultaneously this, once again, this love and responsibility, this deep level of love and empathy and understanding and gnosis of things. But because of that, there's this deep sense of responsibility, right? And that deep sense of responsibility can be I think is very heavy. You know, especially with the sort of like state of things, right? With all of the darkness that is sort of present. It was just kind of what came to mind for me when you were speaking on that. Yeah. So I also did Kambo for the first time whenever I was in LA.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever done Kambo?
Yes.
It was really interesting. So the facilitator woman, she asked she was like, pick a number through. She was like, pick a number 1 through 7. I went first, like picking first, and I was immediately like 7 because that's my lucky number. And so she gave me 7 gates, and she did it. And one of them peeled off, it looks like, but she did it in the shape of a cross. I was like, it was really interesting because she was going to put it on. She was like, is there a certain like shape or pattern or something you want? And I was like, no. I was like, you do whatever you want. And she was like, I want to do a cross. And I was like, dope. I was like, cool. And so yeah, I did 7 gates. It was really intense. I purged for like 4 or 5 hours, like a lot. Like
wow.
Top and bottom purge, and when I finally came back to life, it was like 4 or 5 hours of just my stomach being in this like the worst cramping pains I've ever felt ever. Just constantly vomiting, drinking water, vomiting.
Had you worked with kratom a lot or frequently?
I've definitely used kratom quite a bit in the past. I've never gotten like into a toxic, like I've never like gotten into.
Kambo's gonna purge all that stuff. Kambo's going to purge all that stuff, and sometimes, I had a friend that was working with kratom a bit, and he had actually quit for a while, and then went and did Kambo, and he's almost exactly what you're describing. Was what his situation was as well. So it's just like a massive purge of getting all that back. But that's good because now you got cleaned out.
Interesting you said, because like whenever in my armpits, like I like. The odor that my armpits were emitting was this really unique odor that I had never smelled, not only on myself, but just any other human being. I never smelled this odor coming out of it was truly like this weird detox. And I remember it wasn't super visionary, the experience, but I remember this moment when I was on my hands and knees in front of my bucket, and there was this feeling on my hands, like this, in that position, like on my hands like that, and like your face swells up and your throat's like swelled up. I felt like the frog. I felt the frog's spirit, like energy in me. Man. It was really, really cool. And because there was also like that pulsating feeling, like going to your legs, the tingling.
Yeah.
It was a Kambo was really interesting, and it was a really nice sort of like afterglow thing that we all got to ride into the festival with.
Sweet. So you Kambo right before it. Wow. You showed up clean. That's great. Yeah. That's a great move.
Yeah, once you do Kambo, then you're accessing your lymph system, right? With the Kambo, you burn off that top layer, just like you get from a blister, and that's your lymph system underneath. So all the stuff you were smelling out of your armpits are basically those are like lymph drainage points on your body. And then once you've done that peptide, then you can do these other venoms. And recently I got to do Cobra Venom. Offered by a veteran. My point is they're using the same process as Kambo. They're giving you gates on certain parts of your body, putting super small amounts of the venom on there, and letting it go in. Except that, there's no effect on your digestive tract like there is with Kambo. So you feel effects, but it's not the same kind of purge or approach.
I saw a documentary one time of a guy who he owns a shit ton of venomous snakes, and he has for like probably 2 decades now. Self-injecting with snake venom, and he said he's like 40-something years old. He feels incredibly healthy. He looks incredibly healthy and vital. He's super energetic, super lean, seems happy. There was a guy, his sort of inspiration was this other guy who had done it, who had self-injected snake venom his entire life, this like zookeeper type individual, and he lived to be like 100-something years old. And so I think there's something to the venom thing, man. I truly felt like when I said when I came back to life after like my stomach finally let up, and it was just kind of all of a sudden. I just after like 5 hours of hell, it was like, all right, you're fine. And
you passed through the gates.
I felt, dude. It felt like this rite of passage, and I felt like seriously and I honestly still I feel very clean. My energy just felt like, I feel very grateful that I got to, because Kambo was something I was always interested in, but I always knew like it would just present itself to me at the right time, and that was sort of what happened. And just I can definitely see it being a medicine that I go back to at some other point, But do you guys have any interesting stories and experiences with Kambo?
In Austin, we have a thing called cedar fever the junipers here put out their pollen. I think it's like the first week of December, and people just your nose just becomes a faucet, and so the longer you live here, the longer it accumulates. And I was getting all that built up antihistamine response, and then I heard from a friend of mine who'd done Kambo that it took care of the cedar fever. So I went and did it myself, got 5 gates, did the whole, drink a ton of water, the whole wet approach. And, yeah, it fixed it like that. I mean, I purged out all sorts of bile and everything, yeah. And whether it was accumulated pollen...
I haven't had any allergy issues. I haven't even thought about that since I did. I haven't had any allergy issues, and, that's something I've been, having to deal with basically my entire life. And the one thing that's really brought me a lot of relief is, the consistent use of Hape, weirdly enough. Seems to, really help a lot. But, and this is, the time of year when, a lot of people get hit really heavy with it. It's, October and stuff. But, yeah, no, I'm, right now, incredibly clear. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's all the, the autophagy, right, the nerve growth factors, and you're purging that stuff out of your liver, your gallbladder, all the different biles, and, that stuff accumulates. So if you've got literally pollen in you, that helps to get rid of it, too.
Yeah. Ian, quick question for you. Do you know, or I guess both of you, but I have a feeling Ian might know the answer to this, but... do you know anything about the 5-HT5A serotonin receptor?
Oh, wow. I'll just say one thing. Dr. Jacaloka, who's a top neuroscientist, who's on our board of Psilocap, he gave a talk at the Bufo Congress, and he went into the 1, the 2, the 3, all the way to the 7, and he was explaining how these other receptors even work when your ego's turned off and you can remember stuff. But yeah, tell me about the 5. I don't know what does the 5 do?
I need to do more research on it. I literally heard about this like maybe 45 minutes before our podcast. It was in a conversation with a friend that I was having on the phone, Christian, but because he had just came across something and is like, we need to look into this, whatever. But yeah, apparently there was some paper he found where muscimol, that alkaloid within Amanita muscaria that affects our GABA receptors for sure, and likely has other cross activity, other receptors like most compounds do. But it looks like it probably has activity at that 5-HT5A serotonin receptor, and I just thought that was really interesting because if people report these unique sort of possible psychedelic effect, quote-unquote psychedelic effects from Amanita, and I think a lot of that is driven by the sort of glutamatergic activity of the ibotenic with that sort of ketamine-like effect, but also I've taken just straight synthetic muscimol itself and have had pretty trippy experiences as well too. So it wouldn't surprise me if muscimol was doing something with 5-HT5A, but I'm going to have to look more into that. I didn't know if you had any insights on 5-HT5A or not.
They were doing to do some of this analysis, and they were doing a high-dose 5-MeO-DMT and DMT, wearing all these EKGs, and then they could see which different brain waves someone would have depending upon which medicine. And he was just describing like what happened in the 5-MeO whiteout. How come, or forget that, take that word away for a second, but in the 5-MeO deep dive, assuming you don't white out, how do you, with your ego turned down, still remember? How do you remember? Because you're not you anymore, so how do you remember? And then how do you still record it where you can later remember what happened? And then he was like, oh, it's the 5-HT7 receptor. That's like divination, and then in awe. Literally, this is a scientist called divination awe. And then he's like, and this other receptor here is what allows you, even though your personage doesn't exist, to actually be able to still be recording and remember when you come back and remember it as your own memory. And I was like, wow, I can't wait to learn more. And like we were all saying, we're figuring all this out, but these definitely, it's not like these things work in one receptor and they don't work in another. They're working across multiple. Whoa.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. Yeah. I came across an article. I even just posted about this on social medias earlier today, but it was an article in Wired about how psilocybin mushrooms are getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And it was really interesting because this is, first of all, This is first of all something I've experienced as a consumer. You know what I'm saying? Over the past
selective breeding, man. It's like cloning. People are following the best, the biggest, most fruiting, most prolific fruiting clusters, like 3 mushrooms, and then at minimum you clone from there. So yeah, I think that's what's good. We're going to see that as more and more people play in this space.
Yeah, one of the things that was interesting within the article is this guy was chiming in on it. They got some, expert's opinion. I forget who it was, whatever. But he was saying how it reminded him a lot of the cannabis space, and how over time, flower has gotten a lot more concentrated, especially in THC. It's just, and he was saying how he felt like overall, to the end consumer, that was actually more problematic than a less concentrated form, and he felt like really super concentrated psilocybin would make it harder for the consumer to sort of accurately dose. Like he was describing, like, all right, if people are already having to go down to 0.1, 0.2 grams to effectively quote-unquote microdose efficaciously for themselves, he was like, if strains just keep getting stronger and stronger, people are going to have a harder time with microdosing. And then he said, I feel like what more attention and energy needs to go towards is like the importance of ceremony and setting. You need to remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not saying all that because I necessarily agree with him by any means. I just thought it was interesting, and I want to see your guys' sort of like input on it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's a great thing. Like, keep it coming, because like people want to be incentivized, and psychonauts are the ones that are continuing to hammer this medicine and bring it to the people. And I think people that have a problem with being unable to navigate dosing, then they should be buying pragmatic products that are finished and that are measured from a company, and not buying in bulk from their homies. And once they're buying bulk from the homies, like you have to ride the wave, and that's
you have to be a ninja.
Part where it's like, well, you just gotta be able to ride. You just gotta be like, hey, I'm gonna ride the wave. It's gonna be big. It's gonna be small. But if you're buying something new from someone, if you're acquiring something new from someone, you should always titrate your first dosing. That way, no matter what. I'm not gonna just take some from. Now, when we go on hikes, sometimes people would be like handing me shit, and I'm just be like putting it in my mouth. That's cool, because we're out in the place to do that. But if I'm taking my own, and if I'm like going to my homie, I'm like, hey, I need to get a half ounce of mushrooms, and I'm gonna take like 0.25 to try them out and be like, okay, what kind of effects am I getting? Or I'll just do a deep dive, which is I just go an eighth. I'll just take an eighth, set my shit up, and be like, okay, let me get a good baseline for this. So part of the mushrooms is they're really self-teaching. They're self-teaching. They're going to give you all the wisdom you need, but you got to do it. So whether they're strong, because really my favorite mushrooms are the ghost strain, which are like a true albino golden teacher, and they are like 2.7%. Was the last test that was done on the mushrooms that I've worked with. And
on this article, one dude had his up to 5%, bro.
Whoa,
crazy.
Yeah, but that's like cofactors and shit, like
but
changing.
That's total alkaloids,
yeah.
right? So I think the max is when it's dried, it's 8% of what it was when it was wet.
That's
so
right.
I think isn't 7% the top alkaloid content you can get out of the genetics? Anyways, yeah.
So
without doping.
But more what I'm saying is if I take a small dose of that, I can go like, okay. So I did 6 grams with that, and I'm like, okay, I understand the baseline, and that's where I learned so much that mushrooms like 4-HO-DMT is DMT, like at its purest form. Because I sat in DMT, like real DMT land, for over an hour, as far as I remember it. It felt very surreal and very very like asymmetrical, not anamorphic, like. Polymorphic, like just shifting, changing, and I was there for a while. I was like, okay, I get this feeling. But that's the importance of really working with these medicines, and we know they're safe, right? 13,000 years of recorded history, but much longer, we know. And so, taking small doses and being a human being that feeds themselves, clothes themselves, has a job maybe. Has a place that they can like close the door and lock it, and then take mushrooms, a small amount there, because that's all the coaching we really need. But we've overcomplicated this medical system. We're like, you can't have mushrooms. It should be with only a therapist, or it should only be under a study, whatever. You know, so there's a lot of fear. Well, there's a lot of the system is casting fear out because that creates limitations. People run around their sympathetic nervous system, and things that are curious, it becomes fear for them.
Why do you think Why do you think so many thought leaders in this space play into that fear then? Because like, do you agree with what I just said? I guess that sentiment in general, that a lot of thought leaders play into that fear.
Yeah, 100%. Because they're like, just like MAPS, they build the program now MAPS certified MDMA therapists, and guess the only place you can get certified from MAPS, or at least they started and built the training program. So they're just like any education, just like colleges, they create the curriculum, and that controls the whole system. Because when you teach the person, give them the training, they become the self-fulfilling prophecy. So you're basically creating that. You're creating your own whatever you want, because education is you're going into this place where you're reshaping other humans' minds and thoughts. And so, you know, I would say that it's so important for us to continue to educate the community and provide free access to wisdom and intelligence, because otherwise we're going to go back to the old therapy model under the pharmaceutical process. I mean, no fault to them. They don't know how to do it any other way. They don't know how, because they're not coming from the medicine space. They're doctors. They're researchers. So they come through their own incentives. Yeah. Right. But if they were working with these medicines, they'd be like, okay, it's not so risky. It's not so problematic anymore. But then most of them aren't.
Right. They exist within those incentive structures, so they're
a lot of them went and did one ceremony at, you know, if you think of like medical professionals, they probably went to some medicalized place and did a ceremony. Well, what I would call a ceremony, maybe they'll call it whatever. And so now their medical brain goes, let me just put all, because that's what mushrooms really do. They show you what you have available. Like, holy shit, you've done all these things. How can you apply that in your life? And so people are going, this is how we need to do it, because they know that system, they know that model. And so, you know, I don't fault them for that, but I just advocate for a more freedom and liberty. Because I trust people that can feed themselves, clothe themselves, house themselves, and take care of themselves can eat mushrooms.
Right. Right. And you're absolutely correct when you say that. We have overcomplicated it quite a bit, right?
Yeah, that's how people get jobs.
Yeah, it all comes back to what you said at the beginning about, like, you look at people's true incentives. Like, why are they speaking about these certain things? Why are they trying to direct people in a certain way? You really have to look at where that comes from. So how important do you guys think knowing your sources are? Like, how important do you think the source is, right? Like, let's just say psilocybin mushrooms, for example. You know, do you, or LSD? Let's say LSD, because we talked a lot about psilocybin.
Oh, dude, LSD is huge, right? Isn't there that big fake LSD movement happening? People are getting all these like bunk LSD where they're using another compound that like it sort of presents like LSD, but it's not. I've been hearing about it, but I don't know the exact compound that's.
M-bombs?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I guess the M-bomb phenomenon. I don't think
that's just a small example, but yeah, knowing your source, because I mean, unless you don't know where the fuck to get it from, then you've got to find the most reputable source outside of that, which is, you know, these churches that are online that have followings, that have other people. Like, someone knows someone, you know, and
I guess like what I was referring to, and I was having a hard time getting to it, like describing it. I'm sorry, but like it was like the I guess the sort of energetic imprint within the either manufacturing or growing of these medicines, right? Because like just taking LSD for example, of course you don't want to get anything that's not LSD, but I've had a lot of different types of like a lot of different batches, I should say, of true LSD, right? And all of them have felt different. And I do think that a certain part of that comes down to like the actual manufacturing of it and the quality of all these things and, you know, the process.
Sure.
But like also I wonder, because I've had certain types of LSD that just like have this like, spirit to them, and they're there's this feeling of like this really wholesome, energetic imprint. And I'm sure like you guys have also felt this with like certain batches, certain mushrooms, right? Also, they've shown that like say with cannabis, right? Like this sort of communicating with and showing love to the cannabis plants, like just talking to them.
The water.
They've scientifically shown that this makes them healthier and happier plants. So yeah, what do you guys think of the sort of like energetic imprint on either you growing or manufacturing your own medicine or somebody else?
I think I'll just comment shortly, and then if you guys got stuff to fill in. I've grown my own mushrooms, and I've taken mushrooms from other people, and it's a night and day difference in my experience. So I think maybe less of like knowing your source, but yes, if I got them from a best friend, I'm gonna probably feel similar if they're growing them, and I understand the process. But there's something unique about your hands being in the dirt, and your hands being in the process and witnessing it grow like a baby, and then delivering it, and then consuming it. And there's a subconscious memory that's happening. Your subconscious mind is always recording, whether or not your logical brain is processing it in your front. Your subconscious is always recording. It's putting patterns in. It's putting things together. It's breaking patterns. And so when you have that, informationally, it's energetically. Information is energy. It has weight, and it starts to resonate in your process. So when you consume that, you're really it's like forming the unity, where your subconscious and your conscious mind are now connecting because you've connected the dots. And that's like growing it on your own. Now, from other people, I don't know. I mean, I definitely think that it's super smart to know your source, because yeah, if it's coming from a negative place, or a place of torment or torture, people are being forced to grow medicine, and that's going to come off in the medicine. It'll also come off in the relationship that you exchange when you acquire the medicine, which again, like your subconscious mind, whether or not you know it, if you're generating fear when you're getting your medicine, it's not going anywhere. Like that's going into the body, into the cells, into the soma. And so that has to be worked through in the process, as I see it.
Yeah. Did you say Ian has to hop off here?
No. Yeah, we're about to judge concentrates in the Terpene Ball.
Yeah.
In downtown Austin.
Yeah.
It's all hemp and THCA. Exactly. So I'll just jump on that. I'll just jump real quick onto what your question and what Ben was saying is that it does make a difference. Definitely, if you can grow your own, you can taste and feel and experience the difference. And I remember a friend of mine, I don't know, within the past 6 months, he made me a 5-MeO cart, which of course I've had those before, and this was the same strength as the carts I'd had, a 1 to 2. And I knew it was coming from my friend, so I knew he was going to have all these wonderful prayers and stuff on it, So homie self is like, I better be just, take a little sip, right? I swear to God, And I took just a 1 second pull, and of course, I took more air in and held it. Yeah, and I'm glad I did that, because he must have put 10,000 prayers in there of love, because in that 1 second, which is 0.6 of a milligram. Yeah, it felt much more like 5 or 6 milligrams with all the extra love ingredient in there. So.
Aww.
Well, no, that's what Hamilton Morris said when he took Toad the first time. He's like, if you told me beforehand that the secret ingredient in these cookies was love, I wouldn't have believed you scientifically. But after taking Toad, after taking 5-MeO, I could accept that the secret ingredient is love, and so so for sure.
Fuck yeah, that's beautiful. I think that may be a good place to end it off today, unless there's anything in particular you guys want to talk about.
Nope. Smoke weed, eat mushrooms, fuck the machine.
That's right.
Yeah.
We don't have to fight the machine anymore. Now we can fuck the machine.
Well, I want to. If I had a graph, I'd show the graph. I want to drop this graph in. Is that it's a really good graph, and it shows that if you take a substance, I'm just going to use THC as an example, by itself, and you plot it out, its effects are biphasic, right? It increases, then it plateaus, and then it drops off because it's a pure molecule by itself. But if you add that THC with a bunch of terpenes and other cannabinoids, then the curve just keeps on going at a steady slope because those other cannabinoids and terpenes help to balance the THC out.
Scaffolding.
And I think that's happening in the mushroom where you've got two beta-carbolines in there, harmon and harmane. Yeah, exactly, another lesser tryptamine. So it is a real entourage effect. And I'll just tell you, some friends of ours sent our sacrament out for testing, and good thing. No molds, no pesticides, no any bad thing, no 4-ACO DMT. They're not set up to test for silmethoxin, of course, but they tested for psilocybin and they tested for psilocin, and the amount of psilocin in there was 2% of the amount of psilocybin. We know in regular mushrooms it's usually a 1-to-1, and so that 5-MeO had to go somewhere. That's all I'm saying. So we're still working on the bigger.
Had to go somewhere, right?
The what?
I said psilocin had to go somewhere.
Exactly. Now they're showing recently that if you feed mushrooms enough phosphate, they won't make any psilocybin or psilocin. And so I'm just saying, I think the future, a lot of this is exactly these entourage effect and these other relative chemicals, and it's all from adding different things to the substrate. And the point is, you can still trust the mushroom to deliver the entourage effect. That's what I knew. I wasn't afraid of, I'm going to feed the mushrooms 5-MeO and they're going to make something that kills me. I'm like, the mushrooms, because the way they do, they either break it down into something more usable to other creatures and other plants, or they make it even better. So, like, we were trusting the mushrooms.
They don't survive it. They're like anything.
Exactly. So.
Awesome. Fuck yeah, guys.
Awesome.
Well.
Yeah, we'll call it.
Right on.
Much love, everybody. Peace out.